Hello world, welcome back to the Razor RC, and we got a fun one for you today. We've got the ultimate 1/8 scale 6S electric monster truck shootout. What we've done is collect pretty much the 8 most popular 1/8 scale 6S trucks on the market today, and we're going to be talking about every single one of them and finally picking a winner for what I think is the actual best monster truck to get out there. So these are all obviously 1/8 scale 6S electric LiPo powered vehicles, and they are all RTR vehicles, or ready to runs. And so we're going to go through this pretty much in 2 parts. So we've got a part 1 and a part 2. The reason I did that is that there's just way too many vehicles to squeeze into one video. It'd be like an hour-long video, and no one wants to watch that. So what we've done is actually break it up into essentially the short wheelbase monster trucks and then the long wheelbase truggy style monster trucks. So part 1 is going to be the short wheelbase, or more like the classical monster truck vehicles that you're used to, and we're going to be covering the Redcat Kaiju. We're going to be looking at the Arrma Outcast and Notorious. We're going to be looking at the HPI SavageX Flux V2, and then finally the associated Rival MT8, which just came out a few weeks ago. I'll also be talking about the Team Corelli Dementor a little bit, and sort of briefly, and why it's not exactly figures into this comparison. They are coming out with a new V2 version pretty soon, so I will talk about that briefly. But yeah, in the second part, we're going to be talking about the Traxxas. So we're going to be talking about the Traxxas E-Revo 2.0, the Arrma Kraton and Kraton EXB, the Team Corelli Kronos XTR, and the Traxxas Sledge. And I own all these vehicles. These are all my personal RC trucks. I've driven them a lot, bashed them, broken them, fixed them, tuned them, all that good stuff. So very familiar with pretty much everything that is on the market. So yeah, I figure this is probably the best source and place to get good information about these vehicles. And I do have full reviews on each of these individually, so there are videos out there. If you want more in-depth look at them, you can go check those out. I will have links in the description below. I also have links to these where you can buy them online. That does help support the channel a little bit, but obviously you can pick it up from wherever you want. So we'll be talking about each of these vehicles, talking about the pros and cons, the price, and kind of who I would recommend these for. Now, obviously, this is just my own personal opinion. If you have a different opinion, if you have a favorite vehicle, throw it down in the comments below. Let me know why you like your particular vehicle the best. But this is just my opinion. I have no favorites. I don't really care about a particular brand or model or anything like that. I just kind of look at these objectively and kind of look at the lens of an experienced RCer. And so yeah, that's kind of how we go. First off, we've got the Redcat Kaiju here in front of us. We're going through these in order from oldest to newest. This has been out for I think like 3 or 4 years at this point. They do have another version, the EXT, but this is kind of the original and classic Kaiju. Looking at it, obviously, it's got the big chunky knobby tires. You got sort of the Datsun-ish looking truck body, sort of short wheelbase, of course. All aluminum shocks, all steel drivetrain throughout. It's got this sort of looks like maybe a hobby wing motor, standard sort of quick run 8BL 150 looking ESC. Very, very fast vehicle. So the pros, it is fairly inexpensive. I think it's $450 at the time of this video. Very fast, crazy fast on 6S. Even on 4S, it's more than enough. I think that's something most people will want to drive on 4S. On 6S, it gets to be quite a bit of a handful. It does have the high center of gravity chassis. It is a plastic chassis, plastic spur gear, but it does have the aluminum motor mount, steel drivetrain, including I think it's an aluminum center drive shafts down the middle. Weaknesses of this vehicle: bumper is fairly weak, brakes fairly easily. These turnbuckles can break as well, so I do recommend kind of upgrading them. For whatever reason, the metals that they use are not that great. The outdrives also break. A lot of people actually put bearings on the outdrives because they do tend to splay out and crack, break, that kind of thing. So yeah, there are a few weaknesses. I wouldn't say anything is massively weak on this thing. Out of the box, maybe a couple little upgrades like that are worth doing. The turnbuckles. The shock pistons, I think, could use a little bit of retuning. I have broken parts on that. Bent drive shock shafts, have broken pistons. The body, it's okay. It's medium durability, pretty standard. It does have nice tethered body clips, so that's pretty cool. But yeah, pretty good vehicle overall. Pretty much the pros of this thing is that it is the cheapest one out there. So if you're on a budget, $450 will get you one of these out of the box with a decent radio. So it's pretty good from that perspective. A bit of a cult car. I think a lot of people kind of buy this not really expecting a whole lot. You know, Redcat is a little bit more of a budget brand, I'd say, but are kind of pleasantly surprised by what they get. So yeah, especially on the ground, 4S is totally fine. 6S is totally mental. We'll do triple backflips. It is a beast, and maybe not quite as much durability as some of the other cars if you launch it like 30 feet high. But yeah, pretty decent vehicle overall, and certainly worth considering. The Notorious and Outcast has changed a little bit for their latest round of vehicles. So the standard Notorious V5 comes as a ready run and kind of the standard electronics, standard 6061 parts. And then the Outcast is the EXB or Extreme Bash version. Also comes as a ready to run, but has all these 7075 aluminum parts, the LSD differentials, but still the same electronics, the Spectrum Firma system that you see in the Notorious. So I have both editions, the Notorious and the Outcast 6S. They're both very similar vehicles, very good vehicles. Probably one of the most durable vehicles out there, especially the EXB versions with the upgraded LSD differentials. So if you want to run more power, I do recommend actually getting the EXB version. And then it's obviously going to have more durability with the 7075 shock tires, 7075 chassis, wheel bracing, all that stuff. It does have a non-adjustable servo saver, so that's kind of the weaknesses of that. Also, I feel like the power system's a little bit below average at this point. I'm not really sure why. The electronics are not quite as fast, in my opinion, as some of the other brands out there. Most other vehicles, I think, have a little more power, but the general basis, general platform, I think is really good, super tough. Does a lot of flips in the air. Obviously, this is kind of the original stunt vehicle. Short wheelbase, just like all the other monster trucks. The big tires, which, you know, obviously in the air provide more rotation. They are excellent tires, some of the best tires out there. These are the backflips, excellent tires. Does have the tiny little wing and the wheelie bar. But yeah, excellent vehicle overall. $750 for the XP version, $600 for the standard Notorious ready to run. Decent values. I wouldn't say they're the cheapest. I don't think they're the most expensive. Certainly for $750, this is a better value than some of the other vehicles out there like the HPI or like the Traxxas Sledge, in my opinion. Really premium parts, and certainly one of the better monster trucks out there. One of my favorites, the Outcast and Notorious. Either one, you really can't go wrong. I would probably go with the Outcast if you can afford it, especially if you're doing big jumps, like to do double backflips, triple backflips, that kind of thing. This is going to hold up a little bit better in the air. You can still break things. You know, the outdrives do tend to pop out sometimes. I have broken turnbuckles, bent shock shafts, broken rod ends, broken shock standoffs. So these are not indestructible, you know, despite what you see on YouTube. Yeah, you will still break these things. But yeah, definitely still one of the more durable, if not the most durable trucks out there, and certainly ones worth looking at. Next, we have the SavageX Flux V2 GT6 from HPI Racing. HPI has been around for a really long time, like 25 years or something like that. So they've been around a long time, have gone through a lot of ownership changes through the years, but it seems like they're back providing more part support. They were kind of on life support there for a few years, but I'm glad to see that they are back, and they have been updating their models. And so yeah, the V2 is an update to the classic SavageX, which has been around for a long time, I think like 15 years or something like that. And they did make some welcome improvements, 17mm hexes, brand new body and tires. It does have the captured hinge pins, redesigned battery tray. They did redesign kind of the layout of the electronics, so everything sits a little bit lower, a little more LCG than before. The old one was a little bit higher center of gravity. But it is an excellent truck. Probably the most fun RC car I have, actually. I will have to say, out of the box, this thing is dialed. Drives awesome, tons of traction with the tires, a lot of suspension travel. Shocks feel really good, pretty good power with the motor ESC. Just handles really well, can do double, triple backflips, it goes really fast. So excellent driving vehicle overall. It does have some issues though. First off, the price is pretty high at $765. One of the most expensive RC cars in this class of vehicles. At the time when it first came out, it was kind of an eye-popping $765, but since then the Traxxas Sledge has been released and sells for $800. So this doesn't seem quite so crazy expensive as before. Other weaknesses, drivetrain seems a little weak to me. The diff gears inside the front and rear differentials, they seem kind of weak. The metals I think could be improved. There are some hardened diff gears out there that you can buy on eBay and stuff that seem a little bit better, so I am running those. But yeah, drivetrain in general seems like a little bit on the weak side. It does have a slipper instead of a center differential, although it does have a center differential option. That will cost you a little bit more. Don't like the battery trays. These are kind of annoying. They're kind of flip down style with this little latch here, and then not much room for your plugs and stuff. So I guess the old one a lot of people complain about, but this doesn't seem very good to me either. Durability wise, I think it's okay. I mean, it does have the plastic shocks, which you can definitely bend the shock shafts. You can definitely bend the screws that mount the shocks to your shock towers. Arms and stuff are pretty flexible. Turnbuckles a little thin. You know, overall this seems a little bit more dated than the other vehicles because it has been around a long time. Twin vertical plate chassis, which is pretty cool. A little bit more difficult to work on because everything's kind of nestled in between, so you kind of get at stuff from the bottom, you kind of get stuff from the top. Sometimes you got to pull off the bumpers and kind of get the differentials that way. Not horrible, but yeah, definitely one of the more difficult vehicles to work on. And really, last thing, the part support on this is a little bit iffy. Definitely not every part is available here in the US, and you may have to buy parts from overseas or look for older parts, whatever. So I wouldn't recommend this really as your only vehicle, but if you have a few 1/8 scale 6S monster trucks, you want something different, this is definitely a classic. Super fun to drive. Like I mentioned, this is probably the most fun RC car I have. I like bashing it, but obviously you gotta be a little more of a driver, I think, with this thing, because things can break and a little bit harder to get parts, and you don't really want to break stuff if you can avoid it. You know, the slipper out of the box wasn't set right. The diffs come with grease instead of oil. I do think it's well worth cleaning those up, fixing that up and adding oil. So a little bit of tuning out of the box I do think you need to do, but it does drive awesome. Probably the most fun RC car I have, so that it does count for a lot, although the price again is also fairly expensive. The Rival MT8 just came out a few weeks ago. It is one of the newest RC cars that you can buy in the 6S class, and yeah, it's kind of a cousin of the Redcat Kaiju. Features a lot of the same design elements. Actually, a lot of the parts are actually interchangeable, if not exactly the same parts. So I'm pretty sure they're made in the same factory out there in China. But yeah, it does feature kind of like improvements to the regular Redcat Kaiju. They went with a full-on 4mm aluminum chassis. They redesigned the shock towers and the shock standoffs. They did go with a redesigned bumper, which adds a lot more durability. Obviously, different tires, different body, nice little sliders up here up top, so add some more durability there. Same wheelie bar as before. We did redesign the arms and the turnbuckles or rod ends up here on the top a little bit, so they are a little bit different. Motor seems to be about the same. It is crazy fast, just like the Kaiju is. Did add some more additional durability or stiffness down here in the middle with the upper chassis braces. So the whole kind of chassis, everything kind of in the middle of the vehicle seems different except for the electronics, and then kind of the arms out seem pretty much compatible, if not the exact same parts. The arms are different. They add a lot more stiffness, although I do think they are quite a bit more brittle than the Kaiju. So not sure they're actually more durable, but they do add some stiffness. They also seem to have fixed the outdrives for whatever reason. Outdrives are not an issue on this like they are on the Kaiju. So this sells for $510 here in the US. $60 premium over the Kaiju, and it drives actually quite a bit different. It's got the LCG chassis that is aluminum. It is metal rather than the plastic high center of gravity chassis like the Kaiju. Handles quite a bit better, a lot more direct, better steering, a little bit lower to the ground. Does have this crazy, insane power like the Kaiju. On 4S, this is totally fine. I think most people will be happy on 4S. On 6S, it is an animal, can do triple backflips, although I don't really recommend launching this super high in the air. I think it's a lot more durable if you keep it 10 feet or under, so probably the most like racetrack oriented of this group. Handles the best, very direct steering, although I do feel like the radio that comes with the MT8 is kind of substandard. Well worth getting either an aftermarket radio, or if you already have a radio, just picking up a receiver that works with that. And I think you'll find this a lot more controllable, a lot better driving as well. So that is kind of an area that I think is well worth looking into fixing. So the Rival MT8, probably the best handling of all the short wheelbase vehicles. I'm going to be talking about the truggy class in part 2, but yeah, in kind of this short wheelbase classic monster truck, it is probably the best handling, does drive really well, probably the most fun. Actually, if you change out the radios, tune the shocks a little bit, that again is another issue just like the Kaiju. I think the shocks need a little bit of tuning, drilling at the pistons. I do have videos on that. It makes it drive a little bit better, land a little bit better, because it is fairly stiff and firm out of the box. But a lot of tuning, racing adjustments you can make to this vehicle. So it is probably the most like race oriented of all these 1/8 scale 6S vehicles. The last vehicle I want to talk about is the Dementor from Team Corrali. I had the V2, I have since sold it, and as far as I know, it looks like they're going to be releasing a new 2022 edition pretty soon. There's some videos out there from Taiwan where they kind of show some different vehicles, and it looks like probably there's a 22 on the horizon pretty soon. The V2 that I had personally, I felt like was kind of below average in durability. It was insanely powerful. Probably the most powerful electric system among all these vehicles. The Team Corrali stuff is just way above everything else out there in terms of the electronics. The most fast vehicles for sure. But I felt like, it was still the V2 version. They had some improvements of the V1. With the 22 editions, were kind of like the V3 editions. It looks like they've made a lot more improvements with the tower brace, updated steering blocks, redesigned shocks. So a lot of the durability, issues I had with the V2s, I think they look like they're going to fix in the 2022s. So I do recommend holding off on that if you're thinking about a Dementor. See what the 22s look like, and then make a decision from there. So yeah, this is part 1 of this 1/8 scale 6S monster truck shootout. We're going to be releasing part 2 hopefully soon, and we're going to be covering the truggy class there. So we're going to be talking about the E-Revo 2.0. We're going to be talking about the Team Corrali Punisher and Kronos XTR. We're going to be talking about the brand new Traxxas Sledge, and finally, of course, the Arrma Kraton and Kraton EXP. So you don't want to miss that. Don't forget to hit the like, share, subscribe buttons if you haven't already. Look for more videos soon, and thanks for watching.